If someone had told me the coldest woman in the office would whisper the warmest truth, I wouldn't have listened. The first time I said I hated Sloane Hart was a Tuesday morning, when she wiped my entire marketing pitch in front of the board without so much as a blink. The second was at the company holiday party, when she gave me a once-over like I was a lampshade and asked if I was really wearing that in public. The third time, I was locked in storeroom C5 with her, and that's when it occurred to me hate might never have been the right word. I didn't plan to be there. No one plans to spend 12 hours in an airless, windowless, fluorescent-lit closet stocked with paper towels and toner cartridges. But it was the Friday before a long weekend, the office half empty. Most of the staff already vanished. I'd come back upstairs hunting for the printer paper I was sure existed somewhere. I tugged open the closet door, stepped in, and before I could even find the light, someone slipped in behind me and clicked the door shut. I turned. Sloane Hart. Impeccable blouse. Not a hair out of place. Eyes like frostbite. Of course, I muttered. Why wouldn't it be you? She lifted one perfect eyebrow. Excuse me. Nothing, I said, grabbing the handle. It didn't budge. I tried again. Still locked. You've got to be kidding me. Move, she said crisply, brushing past with that infuriating inevitability, like the world always parted for her. She turned the handle. Nothing. Stuck. Yeah. I figured that out all on my own. Thanks. She turned back to me, arms crossed. What were you doing in here? Looking for paper. What were you doing in here? Stocking up on ice to stuff down your blouse. Her eyes narrowed. Miss Quinn, I'd advise you to adjust your tone, and I'd advise you to develop one, a human one. We stared at each other in the dim light, breathing slightly too hard for what had just happened. I could smell her perfume, something crisp and cold, like citrus mixed with steel. We're locked in, I said, mostly to myself. We'll call maintenance. Great idea. I'll just use my cell phone and oh wait. No signal because of course the storeroom C5 is a Faraday cage. She took out her phone, checked it. Her lips pressed into a thin line. No service. Yeah, I said that. There's no reason to panic. I'm not panicking. I'm annoyed. There's a difference. She looked at me, and not in the dismissive way she usually did, but really looked. You're sweating. It's hot in here. We should conserve oxygen. It's not a spaceship still, she said, sliding down the wall with elegant control, sitting cross-legged on the floor. 12 hours. What? It's after 5. The office is closed until Tuesday. Janitorial services are suspended for the weekend. So, unless someone checks the cameras, we're here together. I stared at her for 12 hours. She nodded. I laughed. It was either that or scream. I sat on the opposite wall, arms crossed. You know, I used to think you were just a perfectionist, but I'm starting to think you enjoy making people miserable. I don't care enough to make people anything charming. And you, she said coolly, think sarcasm is a personality trait. I leaned my head back against the wall. This is going to be a long 12 hours. For a while, we were quiet. I focused on breathing slowly, trying not to think about how warm it was getting. The air was thick and still. My blouse clung to my skin. Every few minutes, Sloane shifted, resettling like a cat who refused to admit she was uncomfortable. Why do you hate me? She asked suddenly. Her voice was low. I blinked at her. Excuse me. You heard me. You're my boss. You nitpick everything I do. You act like my ideas are worthless unless you can present them as your own. Should I go on? She tilted her head. You're wrong. About which part? All of it. But mostly the idea that I don't see your worth. That stopped me. I sat up a little straighter. What? She was looking down at her hands. You're brilliant, crude, impulsive, but brilliant. You've never said that. I don't waste words. You waste a lot of other things. Like, what? I didn't answer. I didn't know how to say it. Silence stretched again. Something shifted between us. The heat, the proximity, the lack of escape. It all pressed in, peeling back our usual armor. You don't have to like me, she said finally. But you see me. Unfortunately, yes. She gave a short, humorless laugh. Most people don't. That surprised me. Your Sloane Hart. People write think pieces about your power suits. They write about a version of me. That's not the same. I looked at her then. Really looked. She wasn't cold now. She was tired, stripped bare by heat and silence and honesty. You hate me too, don't you? I asked softly. Her eyes met mine. No. Then what? You get under my skin. The air between us snapped like a wire pulled too tight. In a bad way. I whispered in a way I can't explain. Neither of us moved. The walls suddenly felt even smaller. I could hear her breathing, feel the tension vibrate through the floor. Her eyes dropped my mouth, and then the closet lights flickered. We both jumped, the moment splintering. Sloane stood, brushed imaginary dust off her pants. We should stay calm. I nodded, but my heart was pounding. 12 hours. It had barely been one, and already nothing between us felt the same. The silence became a third person in the room. It pressed against my skin, settled in my chest, made it impossible to sit still. I paced. I fiddled with an old stapler on the shelf. I leaned against the wall, arms crossed, pretending I wasn't hyper-aware of every breath Sloane Hart took. She sat perfectly still, legs folded, back straight against the cabinet, like she was meditating through the discomfort. She hadn't spoken since that moment, the one where her eyes had dropped to my mouth and then fled. I kept replaying it in my mind, wondering if I imagined it, if it was just the heat, the pressure, the claustrophobia making me read into things that weren't there. But I hadn't imagined the shift in her voice. I hadn't imagined the way she'd said I got under her skin. I turned to her. You're awfully quiet for someone who loves hearing her own voice in meetings. Her eyes flicked up slowly. I find silence preferable to unnecessary noise. Is that what I am? Noise. She tilted her head slightly sometimes, and the rest of the time a challenge. That word landed somewhere deep in my stomach. Do you enjoy being challenged? She hesitated. Not usually, but you enjoy challenging me. Only because you react, because you provoke me, because you're easy to provoke. I stepped closer, pulse kicking. Or maybe I'm just the only one who pushes back. Her eyes didn't leave mine. Maybe. Another silence. The temperature had gone up at least 10. The closet smelled like toner and faint perfume and heat. I've always wondered, I said carefully, if you talk to everyone the way you talk to me. I don't. So, what makes me special? Her mouth twitched. You never needed me to like you. Everyone else does. That shouldn't have made my throat tighten. Maybe I wanted you to. Then why do you act like you don't care what I think? Because you make it impossible to care. Do I? She asked. And this time it wasn't sharp. It was almost soft, almost curious. I sat down across from her, legs crossed, mimicking her posture. Her gaze dropped to my knees, then quickly back to my face. You don't like being looked at, I said. On the contrary, I'm used to being observed. I don't like being seen. There's a difference, a vast one. I swallowed. What do you see when you look at me? She didn't answer right away. Her eyes moved over me slowly, deliberately, like she was allowing herself to admit something silently first. I see someone who's smarter than she lets on. Someone who pretends not to care because it's safer than being disappointed. I blinked. That's oddly specific. I pay attention to me always. That word nearly undid me. I wanted to ask her why. Why she watched me. Why she undermined me only to praise me when no one could hear. Why? She looked at me sometimes like she was furious I existed and other times like she couldn't breathe. Unless I was in the room. You don't hate me, I whispered. No, you never did. No. Then what is this? She stared at me. Unprofessional. I let out a breathless laugh. That's the label you're going with. What would you call it? I didn't know. I didn't know what to do with this new version of her. Stripped down human, vulnerable in a way I'd never seen. I reached for the water bottle from my bag, took a sip, then handed it to her. She accepted it wordlessly, our fingers brushing. My stomach flipped. I don't think I've ever seen you drink water, I said. I assumed you subsisted on coffee and the souls of interns. She smiled. It was faint, but it was real. You're very entertaining when you're dehydrated. So, you do find me entertaining against my better judgment. Do you know what I used to call you in my head? No, but I'm sure you'll tell me. Ice Queen. Predictable. What do you call me? She looked at me for a long moment. Trouble. I couldn't breathe. Not properly. Not with her looking at me like that. And yet, I said slowly, you've never stopped putting me in situations where I can make trouble. Perhaps I wanted to see what you do. I leaned forward just slightly. And what am I doing now? Her throat moved as she swallowed. Exactly what I thought you would distance. I stopped inches from her. My heartbeat echoed in my ears. Do you want me to stop? She didn't answer, but her fingers curled against her knee like she was bracing herself. I reached out slowly, gently, and tucked a loose strand of her hair behind her ear. Her eyes fluttered shut for a moment. She leaned into the touch. Then she caught herself and pulled back just slightly. This is a bad idea, she murmured. Maybe we still have 10 hours left in here. Plenty of time to decide how bad it really is, Maya. The way she said my name, it wasn't cold. It was reverent, like it surprised her how easily it fit in her mouth. You've never called me that before. I never let myself. Why not? Because I don't know how to want something I can't have. What if you already do? Then we're in more trouble than I thought. The light flickered again. She stood abruptly, pacing a few steps before turning back to me. We're not doing this. Okay, we can't. Okay. I'm serious. You always are. Maya. Sloane. I stood now, too. The space between us crackled. I'm not trying to make things harder. I'm just done pretending this isn't happening. What if it ruins everything? What if it doesn't? She stared at me like she wanted to believe that, like she had no idea how. I took a step forward. She didn't retreat this time. What happens next? She asked. We wait, I said. We breathe. And maybe, for a few hours, we stop lying to ourselves. I don't know how to stop. I'll teach you. Her eyes burned through me. For a heartbeat, I thought she might kiss me. For a heartbeat, I wanted her to. Instead, she turned, pressed her forehead to the door. 10 more hours, she whispered. I'm not sure we'll survive it. I wasn't sure either. The air grew heavier heat. Yes, but mostly the unsaid things thrumming between us like static. Every time she shifted, I felt it. Every time I looked over, she glanced away, never quite fast enough to hide the flash of warmth skittering through her. Like a fracture in glass, we let silence take over, opposite corners of storeroom C5, pretending we weren't listening to each other breathe. My legs cramped. I stretched, stood, sat, repeated. She watched from the corner of her eye, pretending indifference. You're restless, she said at last. I don't do still. Well, I muttered. You've had me on payroll almost 2 years. You think I don't know that by now? That stopped me. So she'd been paying attention all along. There it was again, a small truth dropped like a stone into a quiet pond. I turned toward her. Why? Because you're impossible to ignore. Her voice was lower now, reluctant, as if the words had to push their way out. You walk into rooms like you belong, like you don't care who's watching. I've spent my life being careful. And then you arrive with mismatched earrings and chipped nail polish and say whatever you want. So you admire me. I envy you. It made my chest ache more than it should have. Not what I expected to hear. If you're enjoying this story, tap like to help us grow and tell me in the comments. On a scale of 0 to 10, what score you'd give it so far? Your feedback really matters. Not what I expected to say, either, she added. What else? I asked, stepping closer. What haven't you said? She lifted her gaze slowly. I think about you more than I should. My breath snagged. In what way? Her mouth tilted something almost like a smile. In all the ways I'm not supposed to. I slid down to the floor in front of her. Close but not touching. Near enough to feel her warmth. That day in the elevator, I said softly, when I told you looked like you hated me, you didn't, did you? No. You were flustered. I was furious at me. Why? She looked away. Because I wanted to kiss you, and I still had a husband then. I stared. You were married? Not anymore. Since when? 6 months. And no one knew. I didn't want anyone to. Why? Because I refused to give the world a front row seat to me unraveling. And now here I am, locked in a closet with the woman I've spent a year trying not to want. My heartbeat was everywhere, neck, chest, fingertips. You don't have to try anymore. That's what frightens me. Why? I whispered. Because I'm afraid I'll want too much. She didn't answer. I reached for her hand. She let me take it. Warm skin, tense fingers, no pullback. Sloan, yes. You're allowed to want something. You're allowed to want me. Her jaw tightened. This can't leave this room. It won't. You can't look at me differently on Monday. What if I already do? She drew her hand back gently, only to lay it on my thigh. My breath hitched. She didn't move it. Maya, she said again, part warning, part plea. We can stop, I told her. Right now, we can pretend none of this happened. I don't want to pretend. Then don't. She leaned in, slow and careful. Her nose brushed mine. Her breath was shaky. So was mine. Her lips hovered just a breath from mine. No one's watching, I whispered. No one's judging. She kissed me. It wasn't desperate. It wasn't soft. It was precise, like she'd been planning it in her head for months. I kissed her back, hands finding her waist, her fingers tangling in my hair, every inch of her body leaning into mine like she couldn't help it. The kiss deepened, lost shape, turned hungry. She pulled away just enough to breathe, her forehead against mine. What are we doing? She asked, making up for lost time. She kissed me again, longer, slower, like she was memorizing it. When we finally pulled apart, the air felt different, changed, marked. She looked at me with something that almost looked like fear. This doesn't fix anything. I don't want it to fix anything. Then what do you want? You in this moment without rules. Just for tonight. Just for now. Her hand slipped under the hem of my shirt. Her touch was careful, reverent. And after, I leaned in, kissed her jaw, her neck, the corner of her mouth. After, we deal with after right now. I just want you to stop pretending you don't feel this. She exhaled. I've never not felt it. Her voice cracked. That's the problem. I pulled her closer. Then let it be a problem. She laughed, soft and broken and almost happy. God help us both. Sloan didn't let go of me for a long time. She didn't speak, didn't shift, didn't rebuild the distance. Her hands stayed warm on my waist, her lips brushing softly against the hollow of my neck like she was trying to memorize me. By touch alone, it was surreal. The woman who'd spent the last year correcting my grammar, dismissing my ideas in meetings, and freezing entire rooms with a single glare was now pressing her body against mine, like I was the only thing tethering her to gravity. And somehow it didn't feel strange. It felt inevitable. I felt her heartbeat where our chests touched, fast and frantic like mine. Her hand gripped the back of my shirt as she finally pulled away enough to look me in the eye. This is insane, she whispered. Probably. It's a terrible idea. So stop. I said it gently, not daring her, offering her the out she always clung to. Her eyes skinned my face like she was looking for something she could use to pull herself back together. She didn't find it. You make it impossible to think. Good, I said, brushing my thumb across her jaw. You've spent too long hiding behind thinking. She laughed, breathless and bitter. You think you know me. I don't. I admitted. But I know how you look at me when you think I'm not paying attention. How? Like you want to tear me apart and run at the same time. Her breath caught. And you, she said carefully, look at me like you've already figured out how. That hit deeper than it should have. I didn't know how to explain it to her. That she'd been under my skin since the first time. She coldly dismissed a pitch of mine only to circle back to the same idea 2 days later and pretend it was hers. That I'd hated the way she made me feel small, only because I want her to see me. Really see me. And now she was. Are you going to kiss me again? I asked. Yes. Then do it like you mean it. Her lips crashed into mine with none of the restraint she'd shown earlier. This kiss was different, less calculated, more desperate. She grabbed my hips and pulled me fully into her lap, her hands firm now, her touch no longer questioning. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. Everything that had been simmering for months had broken the surface, raw and exposed. My fingers found the buttons of her blouse, but I hesitated. Are you sure? I asked, breath hot against her mouth. No, she said, eyes locked with mine. But I don't care anymore. That was all I needed. I pushed her blouse open, fingers skimming her skin. She was warm, soft, trembling beneath the composure. Every time I kissed her neck, her shoulder, her collarbone, she made a noise so quiet I almost thought I imagined it until I heard it again. She clung to me like she'd been waiting her whole life to be held without needing to justify it. And maybe she had. When I finally pulled back to breathe, her lipstick was smudged, her eyes glossy, her blouse half off. She looked undone, human, beautiful. Say something, I whispered. She blinked, then reached up to touch my face. I'm terrified. Of what? Of what happens when we walk out of here and I have to look at you across a conference table. Then don't look at me like your employee. How should I look at you? Like this, I said, and kissed her again. Slower this time. She melted into me. I don't know how to do this, she murmured. You don't have to. I'm not built for this kind of mess. Then let it be messy. She let her forehead rest against mine. I've wanted you every day since the first time you argued with me in a meeting. You called me disrespectful. I was trying not to say irresistible. I laughed breathless. That's one way to hide it. She kissed the corner of my mouth. I didn't think you saw me. I always did, I said, even when I hated you, especially then. We sat like that for a while, tangled together on the floor of a goddamn office closet with the air warm and heavy. Our clothes rumpled and our boundaries collapsed. Eventually, she spoke again. I used to come to the office early just to see what mug you'd bring. My novelty mugs. The one that says this might be wine is my favorite. You judged me for that. I stared at it for 10 minutes once. Sloan. Yes. Did you ever think this would happen? Only in moments I didn't let myself believe I was capable of wanting something real. I pulled her tighter. You're capable. You might regret this, she said softly. I won't. I'm complicated. So am I. She ran her fingers through my hair, her expression unreadable. Do you think I'm cold? I think you're careful. Is that your polite way of saying emotionally unavailable? No, it's my honest way of saying I think you've been burned. She flinched just slightly. And you? I'm fireproof. I lied. She smiled, tired and a little broken. Then maybe you can handle me. Try me. Her eyes fluttered closed. I kissed her temple. The air had settled for now. But I knew the real storm hadn't even begun. We were still trapped, still suspended in this pocket of truth. And I had no idea what kind of world we'd be walking back into when the door finally opened. I woke up with my head on her shoulder. I had meant to fall asleep, but after God knows how many hours tangled together in heat and breath and something I still couldn't name, my body finally gave out. Sloan hadn't moved. I could tell by the shape of her breathing, the way her arm remained wrapped around my waist, heavy and warm. There was a kind of stillness in her I hadn't felt before. Not the cold kind. Not her usual armor of indifference. but something softer, something that said she'd stopped bracing against the world, just for a while. I opened my eyes slowly. The closet was dim, the light overhead flickering again every few seconds like it couldn't decide whether to burn out or keep trying like us. My shirt was wrinkled, her blouse was still open at the top, her hair messier than I'd ever seen it. She looked human and devastating. She shifted slightly, her hand brushing across my ribs. Then her breath caught. I felt her wake up and I felt the walls go back up just as fast. "You're awake," she murmured, clearing her throat. I sat up slowly. "Yeah, sorry. I didn't mean to. It's fine." The tone was back. Cool. Distant. Like nothing had happened. Like she wasn't touching me for hours ago. Like she wanted to memorize the shape of my soul. "Did you sleep?" I asked, testing the water. "No." I turned toward her, trying to catch her eyes. "Sloane, it's morning," she said, standing too fast, adjusting her blouse, tucking her hair back into place like she was wiping last night off her body. "They'll open the building soon. We should be ready." "Don't do that." "Do what?" Pretend it meant nothing. "I'm not." "You are." Her shoulders stiffened. "Maya, this is complicated." "No. What we did, that was simple. This." I gestured to the rigid way she stood, already 10 feet away in a space that barely had 5. "This is complicated." She turned slowly. "You think I can just go back to the office and pretend none of this happened? That's exactly what you were about to do. Do you understand what people would say about what? That you have feelings? That you let someone in? That I crossed a line? We both crossed it. I'm your boss and I'm a grown woman who knows what she wants." Her jaw clenched. "You think I don't want you? I know you do. That's not the problem." "Then what is?" "You're already rewriting it." I said. "You're already turning it into a mistake because I have to survive in a world that doesn't care. If I'm happy only if I'm in control." I stepped closer. "You don't have to choose between control and me. You don't know that." "You're right. I don't." I looked away, heart pounding. "But I know how I felt last night, and I know how I feel now. And I know that if we walk out of this room and you pretend this never happened, I'll survive. But I won't forget." Her silence was sharp enough to cut. "Tell me," I said quieter now, "if we weren't who we are, if we were just two strangers in a closet, would you still be running?" She looked at me like I'd hit a nerve. "If we weren't who we are," she whispered, "I would have asked to see you again. I would have taken you to dinner. I would have let myself be selfish. So, be selfish." "I can't." I stepped back. "Then, don't ask me to act like none of it happened. Don't touch me like that and then look at me like a liability." Her face softened just slightly. "I'm scared. So am I." She reached for me, then stopped. Her fingers hovered in the air. "I don't want to hurt you." "Then don't." "But I will," she said. "Eventually. I always do. Let me decide that. You don't know what I'm like outside of here. Then show me." "I'm cold. I'm difficult. I disappear when I get overwhelmed. I'm messy. I overshare. I get loud when I'm insecure. We'd be a disaster. Maybe. Or maybe we'd be the one thing that finally makes sense." The door clicked. Both of us froze. Slowly, mechanically, Sloane stepped back. Her body snapped into posture like a soldier. She straightened her collar, smoothed her blouse, fixed her face. The light from the hallway spilled in as the janitor blinked at us, holding a ring of keys and a look of half-curious, half-unimpressed confusion. "You'd been in there all night?" I opened my mouth. "Sloane beat me to it. Got locked in during inventory. Thank you for opening it." Her voice was clipped, controlled, flawless. The janitor shrugged. "Happy holiday," he muttered and walked off. I stepped into the hallway. Sloane didn't. She hesitated, then turned to me. "No one knows," she said, "about what happened in there except us. And I need it to stay that way." The words landed like ice water. "Okay." She looked at me. Something flickered behind her eyes. Regret or guilt or maybe just exhaustion. I'll see you Tuesday. Sure, I said. She walked away and I let her. The office was too quiet on Tuesday. Not in the peaceful way. Not the kind that makes you feel productive or focused. It was the kind of quiet that amplifies every small sound. The click of a mouse, the hum of a printer, the too loud thud of your own heartbeat when you realize she's behind you. I hadn't seen Sloane since she walked away from me in the hallway. No call, no text. Not that I expected either, but I still kept checking my phone like maybe I'd missed something. I hadn't. I walked in that morning to find a new seating chart had been emailed. My desk had been moved up 2 floors to the east wing, closer to the senior offices, closer to her. I told myself it was a coincidence, a logistical update, but I knew better. Sloane didn't do anything without intention. At 10:06 a.m., her office door opened. I was mid-email when I felt the shift in the air. I didn't even have to look. I knew it was her. I felt her the way you feel a storm coming. Hair on end, breath shallow, some part of your body bracing for lightning. Maya, she said, voice even. I turned. She stood just outside her office, clipboard in hand, eyes neutral. My office, please. It was the first time she'd said my name since the closet, and it made my stomach tighten in a way that had nothing to do with nerves, and everything to do with memory. I followed her in. She didn't close the door. Power move. Or maybe caution. Maybe both. Sit. I sat. She didn't. She stayed standing, pacing slowly behind her desk. We need to discuss the fall campaign, she said, voice clipped. There's a leadership gap in the design team, and I want to appoint someone to oversee strategy while the new creative director is on board. I blinked. Okay. You've shown initiative. You're familiar with the product line. I believe you're qualified. I stared. You're promoting me temporarily, right? She looked up then, just briefly. Is that a problem? No, it's just I searched her face for any sign of what she was actually feeling. Unexpected. You've earned it. That's not why you're doing it. Her jaw tightened. Don't overestimate your importance in my decisions, Quinn. There it is, I said, voice low. There's the real you. I'm your boss. Not in that closet you weren't. This isn't the place to then. Whereas her eyes finally snapped to mine. What do you want me to say? The truth. The truth is, she hissed, stepping closer. I haven't stopped thinking about you. Not for a second. But I can't afford to be reckless. I've worked too hard for too long to let one mistake undo it all. You think I was a mistake? No, she said quickly. Too quickly. But if people find out, let them. You don't understand what it's like to be watched like I am, judged like I am. Then let me stand next to you when they do. She shook her head. You don't know what you're offering. You don't know what you're pushing away. Her hands clenched at her sides. You make me weak. No, I make you honest. For a long moment, we just stood there. The air between us pulled tight like a wire. Then someone walked by the open door and Sloane blinked, stepped back, the mask sliding right back into place. You have the interim promotion, she said, effective immediately. That's it. That's it. And the rest. There is no rest. I stood slowly. You don't get to pull me closer, kiss me like that, hold me like that, and then act like I imagined it. I'm not saying it meant nothing, she said quietly. Now then act like it didn't. I can't. I stared at her. You're a coward. She flinched just barely. You think I don't know that? She whispered. You think I don't replay it all in my head 100 times a night? You think I don't wonder what you're thinking every second I hear your name on someone's lips? She paused. Her voice cracked. I'm trying to protect us by erasing us. She didn't answer. I stepped out of her office without another word. My hands were shaking. So was my voice when I sat back down at my new desk. 10 minutes later, a new email pinged. Subject: Weekly Sync. Creative Direction Transition from S. Hart. One line. Let's keep this professional. I stared at it for a long time. Then, against my better judgment, I hit reply. One line. Too late for that, isn't it? The office felt smaller than usual that day. The fluorescent lights buzzed, computers hummed, and everyone else seemed to vanish around me. It was just me and Sloane, though, in a way that made every step toward her feel loaded. She was at the corner conference table reviewing spreadsheets with that cool, exacting precision that made you feel simultaneously insignificant and unmissable. I approached carefully, leaning against the edge of her desk. She looked up, eyebrow arched, and for a second I thought I saw a flicker of acknowledgement that wasn't strictly professional. Sloane, I said softly about the email. She held up a hand, stopping me before I could stumble over words. Do not start this again. I'm not starting. I'm continuing. That made her pause. Continuing what, us? Her eyes narrowed. We are not us. We were in the closet. That was real. You said it yourself. She looked away, focusing on her computer screen like she could erase me by staring hard enough. That was an exception. A misjudgment. A misjudgment I want repeated, I said. She froze, lips pressing together, the faintest pink tinting her cheeks. You're reckless, and you're holding yourself hostage. I'm holding control. You're holding me hostage, too. Her head snapped up. Do you think I want to feel like this? Then why do you let it? Silence stretched between us. The kind of silence that hums in your ears, makes your stomach flip, makes your knees weak if you let it. Then she sighed, soft, almost inaudible. I shouldn't be standing here talking to you like this. People could walk in. I could be fired. You could be fired. We could ruin everything. We already ruined nothing. We've been honest. That's dangerous. Yes, but also inevitable. She looked at me for a long moment, then shut her laptop, stood, and walked toward the storeroom C5. My pulse went wild. We need space, she said. For what? To finish what we started. She opened the closet door slowly, and the smell of paper and toner filled the narrow hallway. I stepped in behind her. The temperature jumped immediately, oppressive and intoxicating. You didn't have to come in here, she whispered. Neither did you, I said, and closed the door softly behind me. Her back was to me now, and I could feel the tension rolling off her in waves. We have time, I said, until everyone leaves, until this is ours alone. She didn't answer. I moved closer, slow, deliberate. Sloane, Maya. She turned just slightly, a hand brushing against her hair nervously. We can't. I know. I interrupted. And yet we are. Our proximity made every rational thought impossible. Her eyes darkened. Her lips parted slightly. I reached for her hand. She froze. Then let me take it. Just a touch. Electric. Her fingers trembled against mine. Why do you do this to me? She whispered. Because you make me feel everything I've been ignoring, she swallowed, her eyes flicking to the door, then back to me. I've never been able to let anyone in like this, she admitted. Not like this. Not so completely. I closed the small distance between us, then let me in. Her breath caught. She leaned against me, trembling, and I kissed her. Not careful, not restrained, not like before. This time it was claiming, answering, giving voice to all that had been unsaid. She pressed herself to me, and I felt her vulnerability and desire all at once. Her hands traveled to my waist, my back, my hair. I couldn't get enough of her. For 12 hours, we had been trapped together once, but now in the narrow corridor and confined space. Every look, every touch, every breath we shared was magnified. I can't stop thinking about you, she murmured against my lips. Good, I whispered, because I won't let you. Her lips curved into a soft, almost defeated smile. Then we're both in trouble. Maybe, I said, running my thumb along her jaw. But at least we're together in it. Her forehead pressed against mine, her hand in mine, holding tighter than before. The world could wait. The office could wait. Everything else could wait. For these stolen seconds in a closet, there was only us, and nothing else mattered. The hallway outside felt absurdly vast when we finally stepped out, but I barely registered it. Sloane stayed close, her hand grazing mine as if testing the limits of what we just uncovered in that narrow, airless space. Neither of us spoke at first. It wasn't silence so much as the hum after lightning. Every step, every breath, every look was charged. I wanted to tell her what it felt like, how her touch still lived on my skin, how it lingered at the hollow of my throat and the curve of my waist. But words seemed pointless beside what had already happened. "We can't keep doing this," she said abruptly, voice low and clipped. My stomach tightened. "Why not?" She sighed softly, combing her fingers through her hair. "Because we can't afford mistakes. Because the office sees a different story than we do. Because I'm your boss and you're a grown woman with opinions and desires," I finished, gently. Her mouth twitched. "Something like that." I reached for her hand again. She didn't pull away, but she didn't squeeze back either. "I can't stop thinking about what happened," I whispered. Her eyes met mine, stormy, divided. "Neither can I. Then what do we do?" "We pretend it didn't happen," she said, frustrated. "We keep it quiet. We stay professional. We don't let anyone see what you want." Heat climbed my cheeks. "And what about what I feel?" "You feel something we can't act on. We act on it anyway," I said, stepping closer. "Reckless by design." Her breath caught. She eased back a fraction against the wall, our energy tangling like crossed wires. "Maya," she whispered. "This isn't just want," I suggested. "It's dangerous." She didn't answer, just tipped her head, eyes flicking toward the office door like the walls were eavesdropping. I took the pause as permission and pressed my mouth to her collarbone, slow and careful and daring. Her lashes fluttered. She leaned into me despite herself. My hands traced the line of her waist beneath her blouse. Her fingers trembled under my touch. The office fell away, the thrum of computers, the distant chatter, the elevator chime gone. Only her, only us, only the heat that had been building for hours, days, maybe longer than either of us would admit. "If anyone sees us," she murmured against my lips. "I don't even want to imagine." "Then don't," I breathed, kissing her temple, her jaw. "We have this, right now." Her hands fisted in my shirt like I was the only solid thing left. "You make it impossible to be reasonable," she said, voice shaking. "I know," I said, pressing closer. "And you make it impossible to walk away." She drew a sharp breath, resting her forehead to mine. "I shouldn't want this," she said, "and I can't stop." "Then let me be the reason you don't," I whispered. Her mouth found mine again, slow, deliberate, layered with risk and restraint and months of want slamming together at last. She wrapped her arms around my shoulders and tugged me closer. I held her as tightly as I dared, our heartbeats falling into the same pace. The world outside the closet and outside the office was irrelevant. "Maya," she breathed again. "Yes, if we're not careful, then we'll be careful. Together." I kissed her harder. She laughed once against my lips. "Breathless. I don't think I've ever been this reckless." "Then we're perfect," I said, smiling into the kiss. For one long, stolen moment in the quiet wing, we existed only for each other. The next 12 hours, 12 days, 12 weeks could wait. And the next morning, walking into the office felt different, every step, every glance, every click of my heels echoing in a way that made my chest pull tight. Sloane was already at her desk when I arrived, hair perfectly in place, posture immaculate, her eyes scanning a report. But I could feel her watching me, too, just like I watched her. The air between us was taut, a string stretched impossibly thin, ready to snap with a single wrong move. I sat at my desk, pretending to type, pretending to work, but my attention was nowhere near the spreadsheet in front of me. She moved around her office like she owned the air, every subtle motion a reminder of the closeness we'd shared, and I couldn't stop the flush rising to my cheeks. By 10:15 a.m., she came over, clipboard in hand, careful, deliberate. "We need to review the Henderson proposal," she said. Her voice was even measured, but there was a softness underneath, a flicker of the woman I'd seen in the closet. "Yes, of course," I said, trying to keep it professional. We went over the documents, shoulder to shoulder, hands occasionally brushing. Neither of us spoke about the night before. Neither of us needed to. The tension was enough. By noon, the office was nearly empty. Sloane glanced toward the elevator, then leaned close, almost whispering, her warm breath brushing my ear. "We need to be careful. I can't risk anyone seeing us." I leaned in close enough to feel her heartbeat. "And yet, we're here." She didn't reply, just pressed a finger lightly against my arm. That touch lingered, intentional, electric. My pulse jumped. Hours passed, the air thick with unspoken words and stolen glances. When the cleaning crew arrived early, Sloane guided me quickly to the storeroom C5, our sanctuary. Inside, the heat pressed down. The air felt impossibly heavy, but there was no fear now, only surrender. "You're reckless," she whispered, catching my wrist as I reached for a box of supplies. "I know," I said, leaning against her, letting her pull me into her side. "And dangerous," she added, her lips brushing mine in a fleeting, searing kiss. "So are you," I whispered back. For the next 12 hours, the closet became our world again. We touched, whispered, laughed nervously, and kissed like we were the only two people in existence. Sloane admitted quietly that she had wanted me from the very first time we argued. That she'd feared it, tried to suppress it but couldn't. I admitted that I wanted her to, more than I had ever allowed myself to think. Every brush of skin, every lingering glance, every tremor of her hands was a confession. We didn't speak of what would happen afterward, didn't plan, didn't label. We simply existed in the intensity of being together, knowing that outside the office, the world waited with its rules, judgments, and interruptions. When the janitor finally unlocked the door, late in the afternoon, we straightened, adjusted clothing, and emerged to the fluorescent light. Our movements were slow, careful, but the undercurrent remained. The knowledge that nothing between us would ever be the same. Sloane shot me a look, sharp but vulnerable, before walking back to her office. I returned to my desk, hands trembling, slightly, knowing that our stolen hours had irrevocably changed everything. By late afternoon, the office had emptied almost completely, leaving only the hum of fluorescent lights and the faint buzz of distant computers. Sloane was at her desk, posture perfect, but there was a softness now, a crack in the ice I'd never seen before. I approached her slowly, heart hammering, palms sweaty, every step a declaration. I wasn't ready to retract. "Sloane," I whispered as I reached her side. She looked up, eyes dark with something I couldn't name. Desire, fear, both. I didn't care. "You've been thinking about last night," I said soft, testing her. "I haven't stopped," she admitted. My chest tightened. "And neither have I," I said, letting my hand hover near hers. Slowly, deliberately, she intertwined her fingers with mine. Electricity ran through both of us. The proximity, the quiet office, the fact that no one else was around. Every factor pushed us past the line we'd been tiptoeing around for weeks. "We shouldn't," she murmured, a shiver in her voice. "We are," I corrected. She exhaled sharply, her breath brushing my cheek. "This isn't professional," she whispered. "Professional doesn't matter," I said, leaning closer, pressing my lips to her neck. Her hand slid down my arms, tugging me against her, the last remnants of restraint crumbling. We kissed with urgency, lips claiming, teeth grazing, hands exploring every inch of clothing and skin. Sloane pressed me into her desk, her body hot, tense, trembling as she whispered, "Maya, what if someone walks in? Then they'll know what they missed." I murmured, letting her hair fall across her shoulders as I kissed her again. The hours passed in a haze of stolen touches, whispered confessions, and long lingering kisses. Sloane admitted she'd wanted me since the very first confrontation in the meeting room, the one where she dismissed my pitch, only to come back and acknowledge it days later. I confessed that I desired her equally, though I'd spent weeks pretending otherwise. We laughed nervously, teasing, breathless, aware that the world outside our small cocoon might never understand what we were doing, or why we needed it so desperately. When the final office lights flickered to indicate closing time, we reluctantly straightened, brushing our clothing, trying to salvage the last shreds of composure. "We have to face the world," she whispered. "I know," I said, tracing her jaw with my thumb. "But for these hours, for this closeness, no rules exist. Only us." She smiled almost shyly and pulled me into a final lingering embrace before we both walked back to our separate desks. The tension lingered in the air like perfume, sweet, intoxicating, undeniable. Even with the office empty, the unspoken agreement was clear. Nothing between us could ever go back to what it was. We'd crossed lines, dismantled barriers, and discovered a truth too volatile to ignore. And for the first time I felt that Sloane might not resist it anymore. The week that followed was a delicate dance of avoidance and closeness. The office, once a predictable routine of meetings, deadlines, and stale coffee, had transformed into a minefield of glances, brushed shoulders, and the faint lingering scent of Sloane's perfume that seemed to follow me everywhere I went. Each day I arrived with a careful balance of professionalism and calculation, telling myself that I could contain it, that I could maintain the barrier we desperately tried to erect after our stolen hours in the closet. But the moment Sloane entered the room, everything I had promised myself crumbled. Her presence was an electric charge that made my palms sweat and my heart hammer against my ribs. I would catch her eyes from across the conference table, just a flicker. Just a trace of acknowledgement, and it was enough to unravel me. She'd glance at me and quickly look away, her jaw tight, her expression carefully neutral. Yet her fingers would linger slightly on a pen or slide against the surface of a folder, as if the world had melted around her, leaving only me in that small space. On Thursday afternoon, the situation escalated. The office was emptying for an early team lunch, and Sloane, usually meticulous about her schedule, lingered near the printer when I walked past. "Maya," she said, voice low, sharp, and impossibly smooth. I went rigid. "Yes," I said, though the heat in my cheeks betrayed me. She leaned closer, just a breath between us, and I felt each of her controlled heartbeats against me. "We can't afford any mistakes," she whispered, as if repeating it to herself. "I don't care about mistakes," I murmured back, letting my hands hover over hers. "Not in here. Not now." Her breath hitched. Her fingers trembled as they brushed mine, deliberate yet unsure. And the pole that had been building for days snapped tight. "You're reckless," she said, soft and dangerous, a warning I was powerless to heed. "So are you," I whispered. She edged me into the corner of the printer alcove, the narrow space closing around us. Every inch of us was taut with tension, the quiet humming with 100 unspoken truths. "You think you can stop?" she breathed, barely audible, her lips grazing my ear. I exhaled slowly, my heart drumming. "Not anymore." Then our mouths met, hers precise and insistent, my hands finding her waist and her hair with a desperate, careful claim. She pulled me closer, and the boundaries we'd kept for weeks dissolved. The kiss deepened, urgent, hungry, our breaths tangling, our hearts racing in time. She let out a small, trembling laugh against my lips. "God help us," she whispered, tension rippling through her. "No one will see," I said, though I wasn't sure if I was trying to convince her or myself. For the next hour we moved through the cramped office, like two bodies learning the gravity of proximity. Every brush of skin, every hushed confession, every lingering kiss was magnified by secrecy. Sloane's usual frost had thawed into something raw need, vulnerability, a dangerous near surrender. I dared a hand along the curve of her neck, She tipped her head into my palm, eyes closing, lips parting just a little. Maya, she murmured. If anyone knew, they won't, I said. And even if they did, I wouldn't care, I finished. My voice steady despite the shared turmoil thrumming through us. We lingered there, pressed to the office wall, fighting the impulse to be seen and unable to resist the magnet between us. Each second tested our will. Each breath tempted it. When the team began filtering back from lunch, we straightened, smoothed our clothes, and drifted to our desks, pretending the fire hadn't happened. But it had. It always had. In the days that followed, every glance, every brush of fingers reminded us we were walking a tightrope between desire and discretion. One misstep would expose us. Neither of us wanted to step back. That night I stayed at my desk long after the office emptied, replaying every moment, the weight of her touch, the words she'd breathed, the look in her eyes. And I realized something terrifying. I was no longer capable of hiding what I felt. And Sloane wasn't either. We'd crossed a line we couldn't uncross. And the question that consumed me was no longer if we could, but how we would survive what came next. The next morning, the office felt like a battlefield. Every glance, every movement, every whispered word was loaded. I arrived early, hoping to get a head start on work. But the moment Sloane walked in, all focus left me. Her heels clicked softly against the marble floor, precise and deliberate. Each step a reminder of control and perfection, and of the chaos she could ignite with a single look. She paused at her office door, eyes scanning the room, and then she caught mine. That single moment made my stomach drop, a tremor of awareness that whatever we shared in the closet and later in empty corridors could never be entirely hidden. By mid-morning, murmurs began to float through the office. A few colleagues noticed the tension, the stolen glances, the proximity that went beyond professionalism. A whispered question, a smirk, a sideways glance. It all added up. Rumors are fast in small offices, and ours had already started to spread. Sloane, of course, was aware. She leaned close as I passed her desk, whispering just above the hum of keyboards. "We have to be careful," she said, her voice low, controlled, yet laced with something that felt like surrender. "We already are," I replied softly. Her eyes flicked toward the hallway. "People are watching." I followed her gaze. A few employees lingered, pretending to work, pretending not to notice the undercurrent of desire crackling between us. "Let them watch," I said. "We'll be discreet or loud, whatever it takes." She looked at me, exhaling sharply, running a hand down her temple. "I hate this. I hate that I can't control it." "Maybe you don't want to," I whispered, closing the gap, letting my hand graze hers as it rested on the desk. She flinched, then caught my wrist, holding my hand like she couldn't let go or let me go. "I don't know how to navigate this," she admitted. "Then we navigate together," I said, daring to inch closer, letting the heat between us build. Her lips brushed mine, a feather-like touch, but it carried the weight of weeks of tension, desire, and forbidden longing. "You're reckless," she murmured against my mouth. "So are you," I replied, closing the distance fully, kissing her again, more demanding, more claiming. Her fingers threaded through my hair, tugging slightly, and I shivered under her touch. The office was emptying for an early team lunch, and Sloane, usually meticulous about her schedule, lingered near the printer when I walked past. "Maya," she said, voice low, sharp, and impossibly smooth. I went rigid. "Yes," I said, though the heat in my cheeks betrayed me. She leaned closer, just a breath between us, and I felt each of her controlled heartbeats against me. "We can't afford any mistakes," she whispered, as if repeating it to herself. "I don't care about mistakes," I murmured back, letting my hands hover over hers. "Not in here. Not now." Her breath hitched. Her fingers trembled as they brushed mine, deliberate yet unsure. And the pull that had been building for days snapped tight. "You're reckless," she said, soft and dangerous, a warning I was powerless to heed. So are you, I whispered. She edged me into the corner of the printer alcove, the narrow space closing around us. Every inch of us was taut with tension, the quiet humming with 100 unspoken truths. You think you can stop? She breathed, barely audible, her lips grazing my ear. I exhaled slowly, my heart drumming. Not anymore. Then our mouths met, hers precise and insistent, my hands finding her waist and her hair with a desperate, careful claim. She pulled me closer, and the boundaries we'd kept for weeks dissolved. The kiss deepened, urgent, hungry, our breaths tangling, our hearts racing in time. She let out a small, trembling laugh against my lips. God help us, she whispered, tension rippling through her. No one will see, I said, though I wasn't sure if I was trying to convince her or myself. For the next hour we moved through the cramped office, like two bodies learning the gravity of proximity. Every brush of skin, every hushed confession, every lingering kiss was magnified by secrecy. Sloane's usual frost had thawed into something raw need, vulnerability, a dangerous near surrender. I dared a hand along the curve of her neck. She tipped her head into my palm, eyes closing, lips parting just a little. Maya, she murmured. If anyone knew, they won't, I said. And even if they did, I wouldn't care, I finished. My voice steady despite the shared turmoil thrumming through us. We lingered there, pressed to the office wall, fighting the impulse to be seen and unable to resist the magnet between us. Each second tested our will. Each breath tempted it. When the team began filtering back from lunch, we straightened, smoothed our clothes, and drifted to our desks, pretending the fire hadn't happened. But it had. It always had. In the days that followed, every glance, every brush of fingers reminded us we were walking a tightrope between desire and discretion. One misstep would expose us. Neither of us wanted to step back. That night I stayed at my desk long after the office emptied, replaying every moment, the weight of her touch, the words she'd breathed, the look in her eyes. And I realized something terrifying. I was no longer capable of hiding what I felt. And Sloane wasn't either. We'd crossed a line we couldn't uncross. And the question that consumed me was no longer if we could, but how we would survive what came next. The next morning, the office felt like a battlefield. Every glance, every movement, every whispered word was loaded. I arrived early, hoping to get a head start on work. But the moment Sloane walked in, all focus left me. Her heels clicked softly against the marble floor, precise and deliberate. Each step a reminder of control and perfection, and of the chaos she could ignite with a single look. She paused at her office door, eyes scanning the room, and then she caught mine. That single moment made my stomach drop, a tremor of awareness that whatever we shared in the closet and later in empty corridors could never be entirely hidden. By mid-morning, murmurs began to float through the office. A few colleagues noticed the tension, the stolen glances, the proximity that went beyond professionalism. A whispered question, a smirk, a sideways glance. It all added up. Rumors are fast in small offices, and ours had already started to spread. Sloane, of course, was aware. She leaned close as I passed her desk, whispering just above the hum of keyboards. We have to be careful, she said, her voice low, controlled, yet laced with something that felt like surrender. We already are, I replied softly. Her eyes flicked toward the hallway. People are watching. I followed her gaze. A few employees lingered, pretending to work, pretending not to notice the undercurrent of desire crackling between us. Let them watch, I said. We'll be discreet or loud, whatever it takes. She looked at me, exhaling sharply, running a hand down her temple. I hate this. I hate that I can't control it. Maybe you don't want to, I whispered, closing the gap, letting my hand graze hers as it rested on the desk. She flinched, then caught my wrist, holding my hand like she couldn't let go or let me go. I don't know how to navigate this, she admitted. Then we navigate together, I said, daring to inch closer, letting the heat between us build. Her lips brushed mine, a feather-like touch, but it carried the weight of weeks of tension, desire, and forbidden longing. You're reckless, she murmured against my mouth. So are you, I replied, closing the distance fully, kissing her again, more demanding, more claiming. Her fingers threaded through my hair, tugging slightly, and I shivered under her touch. And the knowledge that the world outside was watching, even if unaware, made it all the more thrilling. Sloane glanced at me one last time, a smirk playing on her lips. We're in deeper than I thought, she whispered. And I'm not backing out, I said, my voice steady despite the tremor inside me. She laughed softly. Good, because neither am I. The tension had reached a tipping point. Every day at the office felt like walking on a wire stretched over a canyon. The slightest misstep threatening exposure. Even the simplest interactions, passing in the hallway, reaching for a file at the same time, brushing past each other near the coffee machine, made my heart pound, and Sloane's usually controlled expression falter. The whispers in the office had grown louder, subtle but persistent, eyes following us with curiosity we couldn't ignore. By Thursday, it became unbearable. Sloane and I were called into a small conference room, under the pretense of reviewing quarterly projections. As soon as the door clicked shut behind us, she leaned against the table, arms crossed, her perfect posture strained, her gaze sharp but vulnerable. Maya, she said, voice low, almost shaking, we can't keep doing this here. If someone sees, if anyone finds out, everything collapses. I stepped closer, daringly, letting my hand brush against hers. And yet we're here, I said softly, and we can't pretend it didn't happen. Her breath hitched. You're reckless, she whispered, and for once, there was no judgment, only raw acknowledgement. I leaned closer, pressing my forehead to hers. So are you. So are we? But we're together in it. Her hands trembled as she cupped my face, lips brushing against mine. Hesitant and hungry. I shouldn't want this, she admitted. I shouldn't be thinking about you, about us like this. Then don't fight it, I said, letting my fingers slide through her hair. Just feel it. Just be here. She exhaled, leaning into my touch, lips parting for another kiss. Slow, deliberate, claiming the moments we couldn't in the office proper. Every second in that room pressed into my skin, searing memory, desire, and vulnerability all at once. You make everything complicated, she whispered between kisses. And you make it impossible to walk away, I murmured. The storm of desire, the weeks of secret glances of hidden touches had built into a crescendo that neither of us could deny. Outside the door, the office waited with eyes, whispers, and rules. Inside, we were untethered, defying it all. I traced her jawline, her lips, the curve of her neck, memorizing her in a way no one else could. We can't go back, she said, voice barely audible. No, I agreed. Not after this. Her hands clutched my shirt, pulling me closer. We're burning bridges, she whispered. Then we burn them together, I replied, our lips meeting again in a kiss that consumed all reason, all caution. For the next hour, in the suffocating smallness of the conference room, we explored boundaries, desires, confessions, whispered words that had been held back for months. Every brush of skin, every gasp, every tremor of our hands was intensified by the knowledge that discovery could come at any moment. And yet we didn't care. Sloane's voice trembled as she admitted she had wanted me from the first time. We clashed over a pitch. I admitted I had wanted her equally, hiding it beneath sarcasm and defensiveness. Our mouths met again, teeth and lips and hands intertwined in a chaotic, careful, deliberate dance of risk and reward. When the office doors finally opened and the sounds of footsteps echoed into the room, we separated, straightening our clothing, hearts hammering, faces flushed. The world was back with its judgment, its rules, its impossibilities. But we had crossed a threshold. Whatever came next, we were irrevocably tied. Sloane's gaze lingered on me, conflicted, longing, dangerous, and I met it without fear. "This changes everything," she whispered. "Then we face it," I said together. The morning after our reckless afternoon, in the conference room, the office seemed impossibly quiet. Yet, every glance, every tap of a keyboard, every passing shadow reminded me that nothing between Sloane and me could be undone. I sat at my desk, fingers hovering over the mouse, heart hammering with the knowledge that the smallest move could expose us. Sloane approached, her heels clicking softly, her expression composed yet impossibly human. "Maya," she said quietly, as if testing the air. "We need to talk." I stood, meeting her eyes, the tension between us electric, the memory of our stolen hours lingering on my skin. "We've already talked," I said in ways words couldn't cover. She exhaled, letting the facade soften. "Yes," she admitted, "and it's dangerous and impossible, and I can't pretend anymore." I took her hand, warm and trembling, and squeezed it. "Then don't. We don't have to pretend." Her eyes searched mine, uncertainty flickering. "Then surrender. If anyone finds out, let them," I said, voice steady, confident. "We've been careful. We can navigate this." She nodded, her lips curving into a faint, vulnerable smile. Together. The rest of the day passed in a haze of stolen touches and careful proximity. Each glance, each brush of fingers, each lingering moment a declaration. By evening the office had emptied, leaving just the two of us again. This time, we didn't hesitate. Sloane drew me into a quiet corner, our foreheads touching. "I'm terrified," she whispered. "Me too," I said, "but I don't want to be without you." "Then we stop running," she answered. I kissed her slow, deliberate, tracing the line of her jaw and neck, memorizing every curve, every shiver, every tremble. "No rules," I breathed. "Just us." She smiled and guarded, real, and it made my chest ache. Just us. Weeks went by and the outside world stayed oblivious, or at least polite enough not to pry. We learned the choreography of meetings and office politics and murmured suspicion, stealing our own time in the seams, a hand brushing under the table, a quick kiss in the supply room, laughter shared in an empty hallway. Each moment only proved how deep this went. One night, long after the lights dimmed and the city quieted, we returned to the closet where it began. We didn't need words. Her fingers found mine. Her mouth met mine in a kiss that was soft and unending. "I've wanted this. All of it," she murmured. "So have I," I whispered, resting my forehead to hers. "No regrets?" she asked. "None," I said, "only the certainty that I'd do it all over again 1,000 times to be with you." She smiled, and I knew then that nothing beyond these walls mattered more than that truth. We walked home together that night, hands linked, heart in step. City lights caught in her eyes and I saw everything I'd ever wanted: courage, desire, love, honesty. Sloane leaned into me, her head on my shoulder. "I don't know what comes next," she whispered. "Neither do I admitted. "But I know I want it with you." She squeezed my hand, fierce, gentle. "Then it's enough." And for the first time, I believed her. Nothing could undo the bond we'd forged in quiet confessions, stolen kisses, and the heat of forbidden want. The office, the world, the rules, none of it mattered anymore. Only us. Forever. If you enjoyed this and want to support the channel in a special way, tap the thanks button, the heart with the $sign. With super thanks, you can make a direct contribution that helps me keep creating more videos for you.